My husband orchestrated a flawless fake death for Princess Shang. He hid in the study's secret chamber, waiting for this foolish wife to guard his chastity, waiting to seize all the family assets and slip away. Little did he know, I had been reborn. Deep into the night, torrential rain poured down. His younger half-brother, Pei Ji, long dismissed as useless, pushed open the door. Soaked to the bone, his eyes blazed with terrifying intensity. From the secret chamber, my husband watched helplessly, as the brother he scorned most lifted me onto his writing desk. His voice, hoarse and brazen, pierced through the walls straight to his eardrums. Sister-in-law, since my elder brother is gone, shall I take his place? Main text, the hall was draped in stark white, cries shaking the heavens. I knelt at the center of the memorial hall, the straw mat beneath my knees cold and hard. To make myself appear utterly grief-stricken, I dug my fingers deep into the soft flesh of my inner thigh. My husband! How could you be so heartless, leaving me behind? The wail that burst forth stunned the aunts and uncles surrounding me, who had been feigning tears. They murmured in admiration at the Shang family daughter's profound devotion. Only I knew. These tears were born of pain. And of laughter. Pei Ji was dead. Or rather, that Pei Ji who, for the sake of Princess Shang, not only sought to make me barren, but also planned to imprison me until death, had finally executed his flawless fake death scheme. In my past life, I truly believed he'd encountered bandits, weeping until I fainted multiple times. I squandered my family's fortune to preserve his noble title, and poured my heart and soul into raising his posthumous child. And what was the result? 3 years later, the back gate of Princess Onqing's residence swung open. He stood there in splendid robes, his arm around the princess. Pointing at me, who looked like a beggar woman, he sneered with disgust. What kind of madwoman is this? Drag her off to feed the dogs. Only then did I realize. The bandit ambush was nothing but a clever ruse. I died on that cold, rainy night. Before I died, only Pei Ji, the illegitimate son deemed a disgrace by all of the Pei family, dragged himself on broken legs to my side. He fed me a spoonful of warm red bean porridge. Sister-in-law. His eyes, forever shadowed and downcast, shone with startling intensity in that moment. In your next life, don't marry into the Pei family. Reborn into this life. I found myself back in the funeral hall. Pei Ji. This time, I won't just marry into your family. I'll make the Pei clan your personal hell. Madam Shang, stop wailing so loudly. A shrill voice cut through my thoughts. It was Pei Ji's second aunt, now glaring sideways at a figure in the shrine's corner. Why is that unlucky star here? The young master loathed seeing him in life. Have him thrown out to kneel outside, don't desecrate the young master's spirit. I followed her gaze. In the corner, a youth workhorse, faded mourning robes, an ill-fitting, outdated style, bleached white from washing. Servants jostled him from all sides. Yet he uttered not a sound. Only his pale lips were clenched tightly. Pei Ji. The only person who had ever offered me warmth in my past life. Now, he remained a small wolf cub, trampled underfoot without a second thought. Seeing my silence, the second aunt assumed my tacit approval. She raised her hand to push Pei Ji away. Didn't you hear me? Get out! Stop. I steadied the maid's hand and slowly rose to my feet. Step by step, I walked to the corner and stood before Pei Ji. The youth, likely not expecting me to come, jerked his head up. His eyes were filled with shock, wariness, and a deeply hidden trace of insecurity. Gazing at his face, my chest grew faintly warm. The red bean porridge from that night in my past life still carried the fragrance of aged tangerine peel. I unfastened the priceless white fox fur cloak draped over my shoulders. In front of the entire clan, I gently draped it over his thin shoulders. The warm sash tied itself around his slender neck. Pei Ji froze. His entire body seemed rooted to the spot. Even his breath halted. I reached out, my fingertips lightly brushing his icy chin. My voice, sorrowful yet resolute, carried clearly throughout the memorial hall. With my husband gone, my eldest brother is now like a father. From this day forward, my second brother shall be the pillar of this household. I turned, casting a cold glance at the relatives who sought to devour the family's inheritance. Whoever dares make him kneel strikes a blow to my face, Xingji, and to the face of my late husband, Pei Huai. Night fell. The Pei residence hung with white lanterns, chilled by gusts of ghostly wind. Dismissing the servants, I carried a dim, yellow lamp alone. I entered the study where Pei Huai had lived. I knew, behind the antique display cabinet in the study, a hidden chamber. At this very moment, my late husband Pei Huai, who should have been lying in his coffin, was hiding inside. Through the ventilation holes in the wall, he watched every movement outside. He was surely waiting. Waiting for me to pour out my heart to his portrait in utter grief. Waiting for me to hand out stacks of silver notes to placate the clan to preserve his reputation. Wishful thinking. I set the lamp on the table and began sorting through his belongings. Someone! I called out. Several servants entered. I pointed to the priceless painting on the wall, Pei Huai's favorite, solitary angler on the cold river. He bought it to feign refinement, forcing me to demand 3,000 taels of silver from my family. Take this down. In the secret chamber, Pei Huai must be gloating. He surely thinks I'll treasure this painting, using it to remember him. Where shall we take it, madam? The servant asked. I idly stroked the scroll. My voice was low, yet clear enough for the man in the chamber to hear. Send it to the second master's quarters in the West Wing. My younger brother is studying for the imperial examinations now. This painting's lofty spirit suits him perfectly. And this. I pointed to the Duan inkstone on the table, Pei Huai's most cherished possession. Send it to the West Wing too. How can he compose fine essays with a cracked inkstone? This box of rare editions, send it. This purple clay teapot, send it. I felt like a money-giving fairy. I emptied every valuable item from Pei Huai's study, treasures he'd never let me touch. All of it, in one go. My reasons were noble. The elder sister-in-law is like a mother. To fulfill my husband's dying wish, I must nurture my second brother well. By the end of the move, only a few tattered books and scraps of paper remained in the study. I sat on the empty armchair. Gazing at the bookshelves, I sighed softly. Husband, if you were watching from heaven, seeing how well I treat our second brother, you would surely be pleased, wouldn't you? Dead silence filled the chamber. I could almost picture Pei Huai's face contorted with rage right now. That frustrated look of wanting to burst out and kill someone, yet dared not move. It was laughable to imagine. Late at night. Just as I was about to rest, a soft knock sounded at the door. Sister-in-law. The youth's voice sounded outside the door, tinged with hoarseness. And the chill of the night dew. It's me, Pei Ji. I curved my lips slightly. Here he comes. Opening the door, Pei Ji stood in the shadows of the corridor. He still wore the white fox fur robe I had given him that day. He cradled the Duan inkstone in his arms. His entire demeanor seemed somewhat uneasy. What's wrong? Did the servants fail to attend to you properly? I asked deliberately in a soft voice. He lifted his head, his eyes dark and impenetrable in the night, his emotions unreadable. Those things. They're too precious. I'm unworthy of them. He tried to hand the inkstone back to me. I didn't take it. Instead, I stepped forward, closing the distance between us. He instinctively tried to retreat. But I pinned him against the pillar. Gee. I called his name, reaching up to adjust the ribbon at his collar. My fingertips deliberately brushed his Adam's apple. In this household, I say you're worthy. And you are. Pei Ji's Adam's apple bobbed violently. He lowered his gaze, his breath catching at the sight of my face mere inches from his. Why are you so kind to me, sister-in-law? His voice was hoarse. My elder brother despised me most in life. Looking into his eyes, I recalled that rainy night from my past life. I leaned close to his ear, whispering softly enough for only us to hear. Because in this Pei household that devours its own, sister-in-law trusts only you. Pei Ji suddenly seized my wrist. His grip was so tight it stung. But he jerked his hand away as if electrocuted, lowering his head. His voice trembled, laced with suppressed madness. Since you trust me, sister-in-law, this life of Pei Ji is yours. I watched his crimson-tinged ears and smiled with satisfaction. The third day after Pei Huai's staged death, the Pei family's nest of bloodsuckers could no longer sit still. The funeral hall bustled with visitors, making conversation impossible. So the elders used condolences for the widow as their excuse. They marched in a grand procession into the outer courtyard study where I was. At that moment, I sat behind Pei Huai's desk, a ledger book in my hands, pretending to work. And the real Pei Huai was hiding behind me in the antique display cabinet. Shang family. The eldest uncle, leading the group, took charge the moment he entered. He plopped down on the armchair with a thud, his cane tapping loudly on the floorboards. All the guests are paying their respects outside. What are you doing hiding in this study? The sharp-tongued second aunt chimed in immediately, her arms wrapped around a snotty, chubby toddler. Oh, what else could you be doing? Guarding the heir's stash of private money, afraid we'd find it? I closed the ledger, glaring coldly at the intruders. Aunt, watch your words. I'm here to organize my late husband's unfinished work. Third uncle waved impatiently. We summoned you today for a matter of great importance. Pei Huai departed abruptly, leaving no heir. Our Pei family must not lose its line. This is the youngest son from your cousin's household. He is to be formally adopted under your name. The deeds and seals stored in this study will henceforth be managed by this child, by us, acting on your behalf. The dagger was revealed. They disliked the crowded morning hall and deliberately pursued me to the study. They intended to force my compliance in this secluded space. Just as I was about to speak. Crash! A deafening sound. A teacup smashed violently at third uncle's feet, shattering into fragments. It was Pei Huai's most cherished roux set, now shattered across the floor. The chubby child wailed in terror. The crowd turned in shock and fury. Pei Ji stood in the study doorway, silhouetted against the light. His arms still held the teacup in its throne position. The timid, wall-hugging illegitimate son of daily life now radiated a chilling aura of malevolence. Rebellion! Rebellion! Third uncle's beard quivered with fury. What bastard dares cause a scene in the heir's study? Pei Ji stepped into the room, his black boots crunching on the shards with a sound that made teeth ache. He walked straight to me, turning his back. Like a wall, he blocked me completely behind him. He also blocked the prying gaze from the secret chamber. According to the laws of Great Qian, the youth's cold voice echoed in the cramped study, each word sharp as a blade. If the heir passes away without an heir, the title shall be temporarily inherited by his younger brother. Adoption requires the consent of the principal wife. This study is a restricted area. Who gave you permission to enter without my sister-in-law's consent? His cold gaze swept over the still-crying chubby child, and he snorted derisively. It's one thing for second aunt to embezzle public funds daily, but now she wants to adopt some illegitimate child? Does she think the Ministry of Justice is a joke? Second aunt's face drained instantly. You're making baseless accusations. Whether they're baseless or not, shall we take the ledgers to the magistrate? Pei Ji's eyes gleamed with a predatory glint, like a wolf guarding its kill. And third uncle, the accounts for those few acres of ancestral land in your household seem rather murky too, wouldn't you say? Dead silence fell over the room. The study's acoustics amplified every whisper. Pei Ji's words struck each person like a slap across the face. Third uncle, enraged, pointed at me and roared. Shang sure. Are you just going to stand by and watch this bastard bully his elders? This is Pei Huai's study. I looked at the figure blocking me. Though slender, the youth's shoulders already bore a man's breadth. I set down the ledger and stood up. I reached out. Placing my hand gently on Pei Ji's tense shoulder, I patted it soothingly. Third uncle, you're overreacting. I casually adjusted my sleeve. This is indeed my husband's study, so we cannot tolerate outsiders running wild here. I walked to Pei Ji's side, standing shoulder to shoulder with him. My gaze swept over the greedy faces before settling on Pei Ji, my eyes softening with a smile. Second brother is correct. I am the matriarch of the Pei family. When I say he need not be adopted, he need not be adopted. Then, before the entire clan, I declared in a clear voice. And who says the Pei family has no one left? I see that second brother possesses brilliant talent, he's cut out for scholarly pursuits. From this day forward, I will mobilize every resource of the Shang family to support second brother's studies for the imperial examinations. The books in this study are his to peruse. The resources of the Pei family are his to utilize. I paused, deliberately turning toward the antique display cabinet with a meaningful smile. I believe that with second brother's talent, he will surely achieve success in the examinations. What's this hollow title worth? I'll smash it to pieces and forge a top scholar. Second aunt was furious. You're mad. Supporting a bastard son? This study is forbidden ground for the heir apparent, not even a fly is allowed in normally. And you're letting this bastard use it freely? I chuckled softly, my gaze icy. I'm the head of this household now. I have the money, and I'm happy to spend it. Show them out. The group stormed out of the study, fuming and cursing. Silence returned to the room. Pei Ji turned, his gaze fixed intently on me. That look. It was no longer the gaze of a younger brother looking at his sister-in-law. It was the gaze of a man looking at his soul faith. Sister-in-law. His voice was hoarse, as if suppressing some emotion threatening to erupt. This study. I really can use it. I raised my hand, wiping away a speck of tea stain that had splashed onto his cheek during the argument. My fingertip lingered in the air for a moment. As if performing for certain people. Of course. Not just the study, this entire household will be yours to command from now on. From behind the antique display cabinet came an almost inaudible sound, fingernails scraping against wood. Pei Ji was there. Listening to his kin betray him. Listening to his wife offer his study, his resources, even his home. Handing it all over to the illegitimate younger brother he loathed most. The smile on my lips deepened. This is just the beginning. On the third day of Pei Ji's coffin resting in the main hall, an autumn rain drenched the city's white mourning banners. As night fell, the downpour intensified. I was reclining on the soft couch, eyes closed in quiet repose, when a light knock sounded at the door. Pei Ji pushed it open, carrying in a damp mist of moisture. He carried no umbrella, water still dripped from his hair. Those eyes, usually lowered in submission, now churned with turbulent waves. Sister-in-law. He strode swiftly before me. From his sleeve, he pulled a crumpled, wrinkled piece of paper and unfolded it before me. The paper carried a musty, stale odor. And a scent of incense ash, the kind only found in chambers that never see daylight. I found this in the hidden compartment of the food box sent to the inner courtyard. Pei Ji's voice was hushed, as if he were struggling to suppress a murderous intent. He wrote it. I took the paper and examined it by candlelight. The familiar handwriting made me want to vomit. To my second brother, I am still alive. Do not raise any alarm. Follow the woman's instructions. Once you have gained her trust, swiftly steal the key to the secret compartment on the third shelf of my study's antique cabinet, along with the lacquered box adorned with gold-painted designs. These are my provisions for the days ahead. Remember, there must be no mistake. Once this is done, I shall bring you every luxury imaginable. After reading, my fingertips lightly traced the rough paper surface, and I couldn't help but chuckle softly. So that's how it is. Pei Ji's scheme is truly ingenious. Not only does he plan to fake his death and escape to marry Princess Shang, but he also intends to strip the Pei family of its wealth to pave his own path. Even this younger half-brother he usually despises has been drawn into his calculations. Treated as a disposable pawn. Sister-in-law. Seeing my smile, the agitation in Pei Ji's eyes deepened. He suddenly turned his head, his gaze sweeping past the window lattice. He fixed his eyes on the pitch-black study in the outer courtyard, drenched in the night rain, his stare sharp as a blade. There aren't many places in this mansion where someone could be hidden, and the food boxes were delivered from the inner courtyard. Since he was so desperate for the key to the study's hidden compartment, even risking sending a message. The person must be hiding in that study's false wall, right? My heart stirred slightly, surprised by his sharpness. I nodded appreciatively, making no attempt to hide it. Yeah, you're so clever. He is indeed there, waiting for you to bring him life-saving food and money. I'll kill him. Pei Ji showed no hesitation, turning to draw the sword hanging on the wall. Since he's already a dead man, dying again won't be noticed by anyone. Stop. I reached out and grabbed his drenched sleeve. Pei Ji froze stiffly, turning to face me. His eyes were bloodshot, veins bulging on his neck. Sister-in-law. What does he take you for? A fool? I won't let him bully you like this. Kill him, and the Pei family will be cleansed. Seeing him ready to fight to the death for me, my heart grew faintly warm. It was the same in my past life. Whenever anyone wronged me, he'd charge forward like a mad dog with no regard for his own life. Even if it left him covered in wounds. Murder is the last resort. I rose and stepped before him. My hand gently brushed the droplets from his hair, the tenderness of the motion instantly draining his strength. He's still useful to us. If he dies in the mansion, the charade of feigning death collapses. The crime of deceiving the emperor will drag down the entire Pei family and ruin your future. Pei Ji's knuckles cracked as he clenched his fists, grinding his teeth. Then just let him take it? That's the Pei family's entire fortune. I held the note close to the candle flame, watching the fire devour those revolting words. The flickering light reflected my cold, thin smile. If he wants the key, give it to him. If he wants money, give that too. Pei Ji stared at me in stunned silence. Sister-in-law? I blew away the ash from my fingertips, lifting my gaze to meet Pei Ji's with burning intensity. I stepped forward, my fingers lightly hooking his damp sash, pulling him closer. Closer until I could feel the heat radiating from his body. But what we give him must be the leftovers we've picked through. Since he's hiding behind the wall wanting to see us turn against each other, wanting to see you betray me to please him. I leaned close to his ear, my warm breath brushing against his cold earlobe. My voice was soft, like a seductive whisper. Then tonight, we'll go to the study and put on a grand show for him. Pei Ji's breath caught abruptly. He looked down at my fingers hooked on his belt. His Adam's apple bobbed, his voice hoarse beyond recognition. How do we do it? Go to the study. He wants to hear the commotion? Then we'll give him all he can handle. The study was pitch black. Only the occasional flash of lightning outside the window sliced through the night sky, casting a sickly pale glow inside. Pei Ji and I entered, one behind the other. I knew Pei Huai was right behind that wall. Behind the antique display cabinet was an extremely hidden ventilation hole, directly facing the desk. At this very moment, those greedy eyes were probably pressed against the hole, staring intently at us. Pei Ji closed the door behind him and locked it. The soft click sounded unusually clear in the silent, rainy night. He stood before the desk, tense as a fully drawn bow. Though he couldn't see the figure behind the wall, I could sense it. The malevolent aura radiating from him was directed straight toward that spot. Louder. I mouthed the words to him, using the thunder as cover. Pei Ji took a deep breath, and slammed his hand down on the table. His voice rose, brimming with the irritation of someone seeking credit only to be rebuffed. Sister-in-law. Just hand over the keys. Big brother may be gone, but someone still needs to run this household. I'm doing this for the family's sake. Why are you hoarding those deeds? Are you actually suspicious of me? In my mind, I gave him a mental thumbs up. That tone. It perfectly captured a power-hungry, arrogant, ungrateful bastard. Pei Huai, listening inside, would surely think his younger brother was completely under his control. I stepped back a few paces in character, deliberately knocking over a chair. The chair crashed to the floor with a shrill clatter. I cried out, my voice trembling with feigned distress. You ungrateful wretch. I treated you so well, funded your education, let you manage the household, and now you dare pressure me over a few deeds? Those are keepsakes my elder brother left me. Keepsakes? What keepsakes do you need after someone's dead? As Pei Ji spat these harsh words, he strode toward me. When he reached me, he wasn't as aggressive as his words suggested. Instead, his movements were astonishingly gentle. He reached out, wrapping his arms around my waist, lifting me entirely off my feet. carrying me directly onto the broad desk. Pens, ink, paper, and inkstones scattered across the surface, crashing to the floor. A clatter of clangs and clanks filled the air. Thick black ink splashed onto the ground, resembling some unspeakable stain. I gasped, instinctively wrapping my arms around his neck. Pei Ji moved with lightning speed, pressing his body against mine. His hands braced beside me, trapping me firmly between himself and the desk. From the perspective of the secret chamber, it sounded like a fierce argument. Almost as if he were roughing me up. But in his eyes, the fire burning now was more than just a performance of anger. There was something else I couldn't decipher, a scorching heat that sent shivers down my spine. "Sister-in-law, call my name." He lowered his head, his forehead pressed against mine. His voice was low, audible only to us, yet it burned with an astonishing intensity. "Insult me. Beg me. Let him hear." I stared at the youth mere inches away. He had grown. No longer the pitiful boy who only knew how to hide in the rain. Now, he radiated the aggressive aura of a man. My heart thundered, not just from the forbidden thrill, but also because Pei Hui was just a wall away. The exhilaration of committing this immorality under my late husband's very nose sent shivers down my spine. "Pei Ji! You bastard!" I screamed, flailing my arms wildly to push him away. My nails deliberately raked several red marks across his neck. That was the evidence meant for Pei Hui to see. "Let go of me. That's my husband's. You can't take it." "What is his?" Pei Ji chuckled softly. His laughter carried bone-chilling coldness and the sweet taste of revenge. One of his hands truly slipped beneath my collar, but not to search for the key. Instead, his calloused fingertips roughly rubbed against my collarbone. It sent waves of tingling sensation through me. He deliberately raised his voice, letting it pierce through the walls, straight into Pei Hui's eardrums. "Sister-in-law, I'm the one who calls the shots in this house now. What's his is mine. And you are mine too." With that, he gave me no chance to react. He lowered his head and kissed my lips fiercely. Crack! A thunderclap exploded outside the window. As if even the heavens were cheering on this absurd and desperate entanglement. This wasn't acting. Or rather, it didn't feel like acting at all. Pei Ji's kiss was too heavy. It carried the raw, reckless intensity unique to youth. And it held a desperation and madness that seemed to want to devour me whole. His tongue pried open my teeth. Conquering territory, leaving no room for retreat. As if he'd waited 10,000 years for this moment. My mind went blank with a thunderous roar. I tried to push him away. But my hands pressed against his hard chest, turning into feeble clinging. Ambiguous wet sounds echoed through the study, accompanied by my unintentional whimpers. From the secret chamber behind the wall, a muffled thud suddenly echoed. As if someone, in a fit of rage, had slammed into something. Or perhaps the sound of someone desperately trying to break free yet forced to endure. Pei Ji heard it. A flicker of savage, vengeful satisfaction danced in his eyes. He released my lips, his breath ragged. His gaze was hazy as he stared at my swollen, red lips. He didn't stop, instead, he intensified his assault. One hand slid down my waistline, kneading forcefully through the fabric. The other hand tore open my sash. "Sister-in-law, you'll have to give me the key, whether you want to or not," he declared threateningly, yet his movements were reverent, as if worshipping a deity. "I'll sleep right here in the study tonight, until you hand it over." With that, he swept his sleeve violently, the wind from his palm extinguishing the row of candles. Darkness descended. Deprived of sight, my hearing and touch became infinitely heightened. "Pei Hui, are you listening? Your wife, your brother. Right next to your memorial altar, doing what you dared not imagine. And you can only cower in the corner like a dog. This time, you lost." In the darkness, rain poured down relentlessly. Yet it couldn't drown out the deliberately created sounds of intimacy from the study. Pei Ji didn't actually do anything to me. He merely buried his face in the crook of my neck. The hands clasped around my waist were scorching hot, his body rigid as stone. One hand pressed against my back. The other clutched the desk edge tightly in the darkness. His knuckles turned white from the pressure. We were both enduring. He endured some desire I couldn't fathom, as if pent up for years. And I endured the revulsion toward the person behind the wall. This night. For Pei Ji in the locked room, it must have felt longer than a slow execution. He was forced to listen as his wife and younger brother spent the night together, separated by a single wall. Occasionally, for effect, Pei Ji would deliberately make sounds of fabric rubbing, or kick over the footstool at his feet. With each sound, I could almost hear the person behind the wall grinding his teeth. Finally, as dawn's first light crept in, the rain ceased. Pei Ji rose from the armchair, smoothing his slightly rumpled robe. His eyes now held faint red veins from the sleepless night. His entire being radiated a lazy, wicked satisfaction. "Sister-in-law, it's morning." He deliberately raised his hoarse voice. "The key. Time to hand it over, right?" I complied, pulling a copper key from my bosom, one I'd prepared long ago. It was indeed the key to the hidden compartment. Except, I'd already swapped out its contents. I slammed the key against his chest, my voice weak yet laced with hatred. "Get out! Take your things and get out." Pei Ji caught the key, letting out a soft chuckle. "Thank you for the gift, sister-in-law. Rest assured, from now on, this Pei household will be well guarded by your second brother." With that, he pushed open the door and stepped out. The morning sunlight bathed him, casting a long, triumphant shadow. A faint, muffled thud echoed from the secret chamber. As if someone had finally collapsed, sagging to the floor. That very night was the soul departing vigil before the burial, as planned by Pei Ji. According to his scheme, at midnight tonight, the guards in the mansion would be most lax. He would have his confidant meet him, carrying all his wealth retrieved from the secret compartment. Hidden in that cart that daily transported kitchen waste and night soot, they would slip out of the city. To facilitate his escape, I deliberately claimed to be overcome with grief. Dismissing the courtyard guards early. Clearing a wide path for that foul-smelling cart. Above in the attic, I stood leaning against the railing. The night breeze carried a faint chill, dispersing the day's stifling heat. "Gone?" I asked Pei Ji behind me in a detached tone. Pei Ji stood in the shadows. He toyed with the jade ring he'd taken from Pei Ji's study. A mocking curve played at the corner of his mouth. "Gone." Hesitated for a quarter of an hour before climbing into the dung barrel, but went in eventually. I chuckled softly. The prince who prided himself on being dashing and refined, with his severe aversion to filth. Now, for the sake of wealth and honor, he willingly associates with the foul. Is the position of prince consort to Princess Shang truly that alluring? "Did you give him the item?" "I did." Pei Ji walked beside me as we watched the cart slowly exit the back gate. That gilded lacquer box, he clutched it so tightly, as if afraid I'd snatch it away. The box was indeed heavy. But it held no gold or silver. Only stones. And a box filled to the brim with yellow paper for the dead. By the time we finished handling everything, the sky was turning the pale white of dawn. Standing in the morning light, Pei Ji didn't breathe a sigh of relief. Instead, he turned and fixed me with a heavy gaze. "Sister-in-law. That day in the study, you said you'd support my studies and make me a top scholar. Do you still stand by that?" I nodded. "Of course I do." Pei Ji's lips curved into a faint smile, his eyes burning with ambition that seemed to crawl straight from hell. "Very well. I will take the exam." He stepped forward. His body shielded me from the cool morning breeze, his voice low and gravelly, each word dripping with blood. 3 years. He held up 3 fingers, waving them before me like a solemn vow. "I will claim that top scholar title. Then I'll shed this clean scholar's robe and don the blood-stained robes of an official who can kill. Sister-in-law, don't fear me becoming unrecognizable. As long as I live, I'll seize the power of this capital for you. I'll hold up the sky of the Pei family for you." Outside the city walls, a dilapidated temple beside the mass grave. The cart had barely come to a halt when Pei Ji scrambled out of that nauseating compartment. His brocade robe was already soaked through with filth, exuding a suffocating stench. But he paid it no mind. Staggering, he rushed toward his loyal retainer who had been waiting there. Water. Give me water. He vomited violently, then snatched the water skin and gulped several mouthfuls. His eyes fixed intently on the lacquered box with gold inlay held by his retainer. That was his ticket to redemption. His confidence to stand tall at the princess's residence. Open it! Pei Ji commanded hoarsely. Count every silver note and deed inside. And that pair of eastern pearls, they're the gift for the princess. The aide dared not delay, hastily pulling out the key Pei Ji had given him and trembling as he inserted it into the lock. Click! The brass lock fell to the floor. Greed flared in Pei Ji's eyes as he yanked the lid open. A bolt of lightning split the night sky, its harsh white glow illuminating the box's depths. The smile froze on Pei Ji's face. Then, it shattered bit by bit, morphing into utter terror and distortion. Inside the box. There were no 10,000 taels of silver notes, no deeds to 1,000 acres of prime farmland, and certainly no eastern pearls. Only neatly stacked, packed to the brim. Joss paper. A gust of wind blew, and several yellow papers fluttered out. They stuck to Pei Ji's mud-splattered face. Like a silent slap. And atop that pile of joss paper lay a broken tile. In vermilion ink, a line of wild cursive script, written with such force it pierced the paper, read, "Now that my elder brother has become a ghost, earthly wealth is of no use. I have specially prepared a box of joss paper. May my elder brother journey well and soon ascend to the Pure Land." A piercing scream shattered the wilderness's silence, startling crows from the treetops. Pei Ji's trembling hands grabbed the joss paper, tearing at it frantically. A death throat growl erupted from his throat. Fake. All fake. My money. My deed. Suddenly, it dawned on him. The agonizing moans from last night's study flashed through his mind. And Xingji's tear-choked words, "You bastard." So it wasn't humiliation. They were mocking him. The study. Last night in the study, you did it on purpose. You planned this all along. Pei Ji. Xingji. You adulterous pair. How dare you scheme against me? His trusted aide knelt with a thud, terrified. Young master, have we been discovered? Should we return to the estate? Explain things to the old lady. We can't go back. Pei Ji suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood, collapsing limp into the muddy water. His eyes blazed crimson as he fixed his gaze on the empty lacquer box. His household registry had been revoked. His coffin sealed. By tomorrow morning, all of the capital would know that the Crown Prince Pei had been laid to rest. If he returned now, it would be treason. He would be the scourge who doomed his entire clan. Xingji had calculated this precisely. She intended to drive him to the brink, turning him into a true wandering ghost. Fine. Very well. Pei Ji ground the words out between clenched teeth, his fingernails digging deep into the mud, his face twisted with venomous hatred. As long as I live, the day will come when I tear every one of you to pieces. He struggled to his feet, crawling like a stray dog. Dragging his foul-smelling body, he inched step by step into the depths of darkness. Without money, he could only grovel at Princess Anjing's feet. Even if it meant becoming a dog, he would survive to exact his vengeance. 3 years later. The 23rd year of the Great Qianlong reign, spring. The most bustling street in the capital. Today, the street was cordoned off, its sides packed with onlookers. Word had it that Pei the King of Hell, who had solved 3 major cases in Jiangnan, had returned to the capital. Have you heard? Magistrate Pei is the emperor's favorite. So young, yet promoted 3 ranks in one go, exceptionally appointed to the position of Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. What majesty! Impressive indeed, but his methods are far too ruthless. A discreetly luxurious black Nanma carriage glided slowly past. The curtain stirred slightly as a long, sinewy hand, its knuckles sharply defined, reached out. It gently pressed down the corner of the curtain, fluttering in the wind. Wrapped around that wrist was a string of red bean beads, a stark incongruity with his lethal aura. Seated in a private alcove on the 2nd floor of the tea house, I watched the carriage through the window slats. 3 years. That trembling youth in the rain-soaked night. Now a powerful minister whose name strikes fear into the hearts of all court officials. Madam. The shopkeeper behind me respectfully presented the ledger. Dense rows of numbers, staggering in their sheer volume. These past 3 years. He scrambled relentlessly upward in the imperial court, while I carved out a ruthless path through the business world. Now I control half the silk trade in Jiangnan from behind the scenes. Has he returned to the mansion? I closed the ledger. He has. Minister Pei didn't even enter the palace, saying he must return home first. To pay respects to his late elder brother. The manager's expression was oddly peculiar. Pay respects to his late brother? Humph. More like rushing back to see his late brother's widow. Upon returning to the Pei residence, I sensed something amiss. Servants knelt in rows across the floor. Not a breath dared escape them. In the main hall stood a tall man clad in crimson official robes. His back to the doorway. Hearing footsteps, he slowly turned. His face had shed its youthful awkwardness, now sharply defined. His eyes were deep and piercing, radiating the oppressive aura of long-held power. Only when he saw me did a sudden flash of fire ignite in those otherwise lifeless eyes. Sister-in-law. His voice was low and magnetic, tinged with a dangerous longing. I'm back. I stood rooted to the spot, watching him approach step by step. His official boots thudded heavily against the stone tiles. Each step felt like a stomp on the tip of my heart. He reached me, his towering shadow completely engulfing me. No pleasantries. No regard for the servants filling the courtyard. Suddenly, he dropped to one knee, performing a deep bow. That single kneel shattered the silence throughout the courtyard, and shattered the conventions of the world. The sound of his knee striking the stone floor was heavy enough to make one's heart tremble. He raised his head, and his eyes no longer held restraint. Instead, they burned with raw, unadulterated possessiveness. These past 3 years, have you missed me, sister-in-law? Before I could answer, he pulled a token from his robe. It was the waist token of the Minister of the Supreme Court, alongside a dagger stained with blood. I've been mad with longing for you. He seized my hand and thrust the dagger into my grasp. Then, clasping my hand, he pressed it against the spot over his own heart. His smile was both mad and profoundly tender. Outside, they call me the King of Hell. But before you, Pei Ji will always be the man from that rainy night, who only obeys your commands. Sister-in-law, I'm back now. I won't leave again. His fingertips traced the back of my hand. His gaze swept past my shoulder. He fixed his gaze upon the altar holding Pei Huai's spirit tablet, a flicker of malice flashing in his eyes. That worthless Pei Huai's spot. It's time to clear it out. I lowered my eyes. Staring at the dagger pressed against his chest, my fingertips felt the violent pounding of his heart. That heartbeat, growing heavier with each beat, as if narrating 3 years of yearning and ambition. I curved my lips, leaning close to whisper in his ear. My voice was gentle, yet laced with deadly allure. Then, kill your way in for me. Just then. The gatekeeper stumbled in, shattering the suffocating tension. Lady! Envoys from the palace. They say Princess Shang hosts a banquet to welcome Lord Pei and his family. The tenderness in Pei Ji's eyes instantly froze into an icy blade. He rose slowly. Tucking a stray lock of hair behind my ear, his voice turned grim. Perfect. It's time for the debtor to settle their debt. Princess Shang's mansion glowed with brilliant lights, an extravagant display of opulence. The air thickened with the heavy scent of perfumes and wine. Amidst the music of silk and bamboo instruments, dancers in sheer veils spun barefoot across the gold-tiled floor. I wore a simple yet dignified moon-white brocade gown. A single white jade hairpin adorned my hair, starkly out of place amidst the sea of jewels and finery. But I paid it no mind. For Pei Ji stood beside me. Dressed in crimson official robes, his waist adorned with the imperial Shochun sword, his face was stern. Wherever he passed, the once boisterous guests fell silent, bowing respectfully. This was the scent of power. Minister Pei, this way, please. The attendant maid led us to the seat of honor, second only to the main throne. No sooner had we taken our places. A sharp, malicious laugh erupted from the throne above. Well, Who might this be? Why, it's Minister Pei's elder sister-in-law. Princess Shang reclined half-leaning on a tiger skin-covered couch. She held a male favorite wearing a silver mask in her arms. Fanning herself with a round fan, her gaze darted around me like a venomous snake. Minister Pei, this banquet is to welcome you home. Why bring an ill-omened widow? Do you not fear offending this palace's noble aura? The entire hall fell instantly silent. All eyes waited to see the spectacle, how this newly appointed Minister of Justice would respond. After all, offending the most favored princess over a widow seemed hardly wise. My grip on the teacup tightened slightly as I prepared to speak. Smack! Pei Ji slammed his embroidered spring dagger onto the tabletop, sending tremors through the wine cups. He slowly lifted his gaze. His phoenix-shaped eyes held not a shred of warmth as he fixed them on Princess Shang. Your Highness, choose your words carefully. His voice was not loud, yet it carried a chill born of battlefields strewn with corpses and blood. My eldest brother passed away young, and my elder sister-in-law has been like a mother to me. Everything I am today is thanks to her guidance and support. In my eyes, she is the most noble person in this world. If your Highness looks down upon her, then you are insulting this humble servant and the Ministry of Justice. Princess Shang's expression stiffened, clearly taken aback that this stubborn man dared defy her publicly. But mindful of Pei Ji's current power, she could only offer a forced laugh and change the subject. Minister Pei overstates the matter. I was merely joking. Attendants, bring wine. She clapped her hands. The masked male favorite in her embrace promptly picked up the wine jug. He shuffled down the steps, his steps unsteady. As he drew nearer, my breath caught in my throat. Though he wore a mask. Though his frame was hunched, skin stretched taut over bones. Though he carried a scent mingled with cheap cosmetics and medicinal herbs. But those hands, I'd recognize them even if I were turned to ashes. A red mole at the base of his thumb. It was Pei Ji. The one self-proclaimed noble prince who claimed his fingers never touched the spring water. Now clad in sheer, flesh-revealing gauze. Like the most lowly of servants. Kneeling before the table shared by me and Pei Ji. Lord Pei, Lady Pei, please. Please partake of the wine. His voice was hoarse and unpleasant, as if his throat had been scorched by smoke. He was deliberately lowering his voice. Yet I still detected the extreme terror and venom hidden beneath the tremor. Pei Ji clearly recognized him too. Seated there, he looked down from above at his own brother kneeling on the floor. A cruel curve lifted the corner of his mouth. Did you pour this wine? Pei Ji asked casually. Pei Ji shuddered, burying his head lower. Yes. This servant poured it. I dislike having wine poured while kneeling. Pei Ji abruptly extended his official boot, its tip ruthlessly lifting Pei Ji's chin. Forcing him to lift his head. Their eyes locked. Behind the mask, his eyes were bloodshot. Filled with humiliation, resentment, and the collapse he felt seeing his ex-wife so radiant. Pei Ji smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. Why are your hands shaking? What, seeing this official and the lady reminds you of some old acquaintance? No. Pei Ji's teeth chattered. If not, then serve her well. Pei Ji withdrew his foot, pointing at the wine cup before me with a chilling tone. Fill the lady's cup. Spill a single drop, and I'll chop off your hand. Pei Ji stiffly turned, crawling on his knees before me. He looked at me. He looked at my priceless cloud brocade robes. He looked at the white jade hairpin in my hair, the one he'd once been too stingy to buy for me. Then he looked at his own effeminate attire. In that moment, I saw the thing called self-respect shatter completely in his eyes. Madam, please drink. He raised the wine jug, trembling. Whether from fear or resentment, the spout tilted, and droplets splattered onto my skirt. Useless! Before Pei Ji could react, Princess Shang, seated at the head of the table, erupted in fury. She snatched the fruit platter from the table and hurled it. It struck Pei Ji squarely on the temple. Can't even pour wine properly. What use is keeping you, this dog? Wipe it clean for Lady Pei, now. Blood trickled down beneath his mask. Pei Ji ignored the pain, scrambling to his knees. With hands once dedicated to poetry and painting, he humbly wiped the wine stain from my skirt. I looked down at him. At the man who once sought to lock me away in the mad tower. Now he crawled at my feet like a dog. Not a ripple stirred within me. Only utter satisfaction. I gently withdrew my foot. As if it were filth. Enough. My voice was cool and detached. It's merely a garment. Don't spoil His Highness's good mood. Gee, let's go. This wine fumes are too overpowering. I feel a bit dizzy. Pei Ji rose immediately, not even glancing at Pei Hui on the floor. Before the entire hall of guests, he carefully supported me, his voice gentle. Very well. Let us return home. From behind came Princess Onqing's furious shouts and the sound of whipping Pei Hui. After returning from the princess's residence, Pei Ji seemed off. He drank heavily at the banquet to shield me from the wine. Throughout the carriage ride back, his eyes remained tightly shut. His brow furrowed, fine beads of cold sweat forming on his forehead. It was an old wound, left when he'd been ambushed by desperados while investigating a major salt monopoly case in Jiangnan. To climb to the high position of Minister of Justice in just 3 short years, he took on cases no one else dared touch. This crimson robe was not only stained with others' blood. It was also forged with his own life. Now, the rising alcohol fumes stirred his old ailment, triggering a high fever. Upon returning to the mansion, I had him carried into the bedroom and dismissed the servants. I personally went to the small kitchen to brew a sobering decoction and fever-reducing medicine. Half an hour later, I entered the room, bowl of medicine in hand. No lamps lit the chamber, only the pallid moonlight spilled across the bedside. Pei Ji lay there, breathing heavily. He seemed trapped in a profound nightmare. Don't be afraid. His words were slurred and incoherent, his hand flailing wildly in the air. As if, in the rain-drenched night, he was grasping at something slipping away. Sister-in-law. Porridge. Drink it while it's hot. My heart clenched painfully, and my eyes instantly welled up. Even in his dream, he was still thinking of bringing me porridge. That rainy night in my past life when I was imprisoned until death. It was he who crawled in, dragging his broken leg, covered in blood. Clutched to his chest was a steaming bowl of red bean porridge. That was the last bit of sweetness I tasted before dying in my previous life. I approached the bedside, watching his face contorted in agony, my heart wrenching. I placed the medicine bowl by the headboard and pulled a small paper packet from my sleeve pocket. It was the dried tangerine peel I'd impulsively grabbed from the kitchen earlier. I tore the dried tangerine peel into pieces without a second thought and sprinkled them into the dark, bitter liquid, stirring gently. Just as he had done for me in my past life. Ah, gee, wake up and take your medicine. I lifted his burning body, letting him lean against my chest. Feverish and dazed, his jaw clenched tightly, instinctively resisting the bitter medicine. I scooped a spoonful of the medicine, blew on it to cool it, and brought it to his lips, coaxing him softly. Be good, open your mouth. This time I added dried tangerine peel, just like the porridge you made for me back then. It won't taste bitter. These words. I spoke them to him, unconscious. But I also spoke them to myself. Yet, the instant the spoon touched his lips, the body in my arms, tense and burning hot, suddenly stiffened violently. The next second, Pei Ji's eyes snapped open. There was no trace of sleepiness in them, nor any hint of drunkenness. Only shock like an abyss, utter bewilderment. And a tremor of disbelief. He stared at me fixedly. His gaze fell upon the bowl of medicinal broth, dotted with fragments of dried tangerine peel. Then it slowly shifted to my face. Sister-in-law. His voice was hoarse and broken, as if someone had clamped down on his throat. What did you just say? My heart skipped a beat, and panic instantly seized me. What had I just said? I said it was like the porridge you used to make for me. But in this lifetime, Pei Ji had never once made porridge for me, nor ever mentioned dried tangerine peel in my presence. My hand trembled, spilling a few drops of the medicinal liquid onto my wrist. The searing heat pierced my skin. Pei Ji paid no heed to the burn, seizing my wrist with a force that threatened to crush my bones. He struggled to sit upright, his gaze burning into mine. His eyes instantly flushed crimson. The rain was heavy that night, wasn't it? Pei Ji stared at me relentlessly. The red veins in his eyes seemed ready to burst. Instead of embracing me immediately, he yanked his hand back. He recoiled as if electrocuted, retreating to the corner of the bed. His entire body shook violently. You saw it all, didn't you? He clutched his head, his voice hoarse and unrecognizable. It carried a despair bordering on collapse. You saw me beaten like a dog, legs broken. You saw me crawling through mud. You saw me too weak even to wipe your tombstone. Don't look at me. Xingji, don't look at me like that. He suddenly growled, like a beast stripped bare of all pretense. Fragile, utterly vulnerable. That Pei Ji from my past life was too filthy, too useless. I don't deserve you. I feared you'd despise me. So that was it. The boy who had unhesitatingly draped the fox fur over me in the funeral hall. The one who had clawed his way up just to protect me. He wasn't seeking praise. He was afraid. Afraid I'd remember him at his most wretched, most helpless. You fool. The medicine bowl in my hand shattered on the floor. I couldn't hold back any longer. I threw myself forward and embraced the man trembling in the corner of the bed. I pressed his head forcefully into the crook of my neck, tears streaming down my face. I don't despise you. My Ji, you've been the best in both lifetimes. Pei Ji stiffened for a long moment. Only then, as if finally certain I never loathed him, he suddenly reversed our positions, pulling me fiercely into his embrace. His grip was so tight it felt like he was trying to snap my ribs, driven by a mad, desperate longing for what he'd lost and found again. You said it. Sister-in-law, you were the one who tempted me first. This embrace was too forceful, squeezing my bones raw. Yet it filled the emptiness of my 2 lifetimes. His voice cracked and choked against my ear. I thought I was the only one who remembered. I thought this lifetime I could only watch over you from the shadows. Heaven, it finally took pity on me once. He cupped my face, his fingertips trembling as he wiped away my tears. His gaze was reverent, as if beholding a lost treasure returned. That bowl of porridge in our past life was too bitter. This time, Pei Ji will give you his very life to ensure you live without worry. Is that all right? I looked at him through my tears. It was as if I saw that boy again, the one who had screamed in despair during that rainy night in our past life. My tears turned to laughter, and I leaned in to kiss his burning lips. All love and all hatred melted into that kiss. Agreed. Then together, we'll make those who owe us pay in blood. Moonlight spilled like water outside the window. Inside the room, 2 souls, each broken once before. At this moment, they finally pieced themselves together completely. No longer uncle and niece, no longer allies. They were accomplices, lovers. Each other's sole salvation in this world. After that night of mutual confession, Pei Ji and I did not wallow in romantic indulgence. Because we knew. That mad dog, Pei Huai, was not yet dead. News recently spread from the Anqing princess's mansion. That masked male favorite had stolen the princess's token. And fled. You let him go, didn't you? I ground ink for Pei Ji in the study. Watching his composed demeanor, I asked softly. He burned the secret letter, a smirk curling his lips. Jealousy is the finest death warrant. Just let him know I'm sleeping with his wife, spending his money, he'll crawl out to file an imperial complaint, even if he has to crawl. Without making a scene, how could I legitimately have him executed by slow slicing? Pei Ji drew my hand to his lips and kissed it. Sure enough. Within 3 days, the capital erupted. A man reeking of filth, his face horribly disfigured. Wielding a token stolen from the princess's residence, he stormed the gates of Shentian Prefecture. Like a madman, he pounded the drum of grievance. He screamed. I am Pei Huai, heir to the loyal and valiant marquis. I am not dead. That traitor Pei Ji framed me. He conspired with that harlot, Lady Shang, to seize my inheritance and sold me into slavery. I demand an imperial petition. I must see the emperor. This petition. targeted the court's most favored figure and exposed the dark secrets of the aristocracy. Rumors spread like wildfire throughout the capital. The common folk relished such scandalous tales of uncle and sister-in-law committing incest. In an instant, Pei Ji was thrust into the eye of the storm. Reports from the censorate poured into the imperial study like snowflakes. They impeached Pei Ji for moral corruption, accusing him of incestuous depravity. Hearing these rumors within the mansion, I could only laugh. Pei Huai, oh Pei Huai, did you think this was your final counterattack? The case involved high-ranking ministers and the son of a noble house. The Shuntian prefecture dared not preside, so the case was directly transferred to the Supreme Court of Justice. Pei Ji's domain. But to avoid any appearance of bias, and because the scandal had grown too large, the emperor specially appointed the Minister of Justice to preside. A tripartite joint trial. The courtroom was solemn and imposing. Pei Huai knelt before the bench, though cleansed of filth. His face, however, was twisted and grotesque from the torture endured at the princess's residence and injuries sustained during his escape. Yet his eyes burned with fanatical intensity, fixed upon Pei Ji and me in the spectator seats. Your Honor! I truly am Pei Huai! Pei Huai cried, tears streaming down his face. 3 years ago, Pei Ji deceived me into faking my death, all to seize my wife and inheritance. These past 3 years, he imprisoned and tortured me, leaving me neither able to live nor die. Honorable magistrate, I implore you to vindicate me. Admittedly, his narrative was highly inflammatory. Had this been the bookish Pei Ji of 3 years past, he might well have fallen for this reversal of roles. The Minister of Justice frowned, turning to Pei Ji. Minister Pei, this. Pei Ji, clad in his crimson official robe, sipped his tea with deliberate composure. He claims to be Pei Huai? Pei Huai was buried 3 years ago. His remains were interred, his household registry revoked. This man makes baseless accusations. On what grounds does he claim to be the heir of the Marquis's household? I have proof. Pei Huai grew frantic, pointing at me and bellowing. Madam Shang. Madam Shang is my lawful wife. Though we never consummated the marriage. My daily habits, she knows them best. Xingshi, speak up. His words were incoherent. He wanted to mention consummation, but then remembered how he had always prided himself on his purity, despising her merchant background. He never touched me after our marriage. He couldn't describe any of my features, only raging impotently. Your Honor. I stood up, calmly walking to the center of the hall. I bowed to the presiding judge. Not even a glance for Pei Huai on the floor. This man speaks nothing but lies. This humble woman has never seen him before. Since he claims to be Pei Huai, Lord Pei has conveniently prepared an old acquaintance for him. I took a step back, looking at Pei Ji. Pei Ji gave a slight nod and barked a cold command to the court below. Bring the witness. At his command, a woman dressed in finery but with a face twisted in fury entered. It was Princess Shang. Seeing the princess, a flicker of hope passed through Pei Huai's eyes. He believed that although the princess had tormented him, she could at least verify his identity. Your Highness! Save me! I am Pei Huai. Pei Huai crawled toward her like a dog. Get away! Princess Shang kicked him hard, sending him sprawling. She wiped her shoe with a handkerchief in disgust. Turning to the presiding judge, she sneered. Minister, I have come today to identify this runaway slave. His name is Cho, a lowly servant purchased by my household 3 years ago. He stole my token and fled, his hands and feet unclean. Unbelievably, to escape punishment, he dares impersonate the deceased heir of the Pei family. Pei Huai froze in place, struck as if by lightning. Your Highness, what did you say? Shut up! Pei Ji interjected at the perfect moment, his voice icy. Impersonating a noble is a capital offense. Stealing the princess's token is a capital offense. Slandering an imperial official is also a capital offense. He flicked a stack of documents from his sleeve. This is the princess's household contract. It bears your fingerprint, stating you voluntarily sold yourself into slavery under the name Cho. What? Now you wish to retract your confession? The contract was naturally forged, or rather, a deal Pei Ji had long prearranged with the princess. For the princess, admitting she slept with a fake dead man who deceived the emperor was a capital offense. But admitting she slept with a thieving house slave was merely embarrassing. Any fool knew which choice to make. No. That's not it. Pei Ji stared at the indenture. He stared at the princess's cold face. He stared at Pei Ji, towering above him. Finally, he understood the deadly trap he'd fallen into. I really am Pei Ji. He screamed in despair. Take him away. The Minister of Punishment slammed his gavel. This man impersonated a noble, a heinous crime. Sentence, death by Lingqi. Death row. Dark, damp, reeking of blood. Pei Ji was bound to the execution rack, his sentence to be carried out tomorrow. The jailer opened the cell door, and Pei Ji and I stepped inside. Seeing us, Pei Ji's once clouded eyes suddenly blazed with venomous hatred. Pei Ji! Xing Ji! May you both rot in hell. Pei Ji dismissed the jailer and wrapped his arm around my waist. He even carefully covered my mouth and nose. Fearing the foul air would taint me, I stepped before Pei Ji, staring at the face that had disgusted me for 2 lifetimes. Pei Ji, what injustice do you claim? 3 years ago, that plan was your own decision. The fake death potion, you drank it yourself. The path to the princess's mansion, you chose it yourself. We merely went with the flow. You. Pei Ji trembled with rage. Then the joss paper. The study. Oh, you mean that night? Pei Ji chuckled softly, right in front of Pei Ji. He leaned down and kissed my cheek, his gaze defiant. That night in the study. Your scent, sister-in-law, was truly intoxicating. Thanks to Big Brother delivering the key, fulfilling our desire. Pei Ji screamed in utter collapse, struggling desperately. His wrists were raw and bloody from the iron chains. Adulterers! Shameless! If father were still alive, he'd drown you both in a pig cage. Too bad father is gone. Pei Ji's gaze turned icy as he leaned close to Pei Ji's ear. In a voice only he could hear, he spoke slowly, enunciating each word. Brother, I've actually died once before. In my past life, you imprisoned sister-in-law until she died for Princess Shang, and you broke my legs. This life, I'm merely returning the favor. Pei Ji's pupils dilated violently as he stared at Pei Ji as if seeing a ghost. You are. Shu. Pei Ji raised a finger. Save your strength. Tomorrow's Lingqi will require 3,600 cuts. Brother, savor it slowly. We turned and walked away. Behind us came Pei Ji's heart-wrenching screams and pleas for mercy. But deep within the death cell, no one would hear. Pei Ji died. On the day of his Lingqi, it was said the entire city's populace gathered to watch. Yet even after Pei Ji's death, the rumors about me and Pei Ji never ceased. The label of uncle and niece committing adultery was pinned on the Minister of Justice himself. It became the perfect ammunition for his political enemies to attack him. Some censors even petitioned fiercely, demanding I be sent to a nunnery to preserve the Pei family's honor. Pei Ji knelt outside the Hall of Mental Cultivation for 3 days and nights. On the 4th day, the emperor summoned him. Within the imperial study, incense smoke curled gently. The emperor gazed at Pei Ji, kneeling on the floor, gaunt yet with his back rigidly straight. He sighed. Pei Ji was the sharpest blade in his hand. This blade served him well, but it was far too fragile. The emperor asked, Minister Pei, for the sake of one woman, is it worth it? Your Majesty. Pei Ji bowed his head heavily. In this life, I seek only 2 things. The first is to ease your Majesty's burdens. The second is to protect her. Without her, there would be no Pei Ji of today. The emperor remained silent for a long while. A loyal minister with a weakness was more reassuring to the emperor than a saint without desires. Pei Ji had placed his weakness in the emperor's hands. Naturally, the emperor would protect this blade. The Shang family must not be spared. The emperor spoke indifferently. Pei Ji snapped his head up, his eyes burning crimson. Your Majesty. I said the Shang family must not be spared. The emperor tossed down an imperial edict, already drafted. His tone was laden with meaning. Lady Shang was a woman of unyielding virtue. Upon hearing of her husband's death, she fell ill from grief yesterday and passed away. I have already ordered the construction of a chastity arch in her honor. Pei Ji froze, then realized. The emperor continued. However, I've heard of the Shan family, imperial merchants of Jiangnan. Their eldest daughter, Shanxi, is gentle and virtuous, with a talent for commerce. I hereby confer upon her the title of Lady of Anping County and grant her in marriage to Pei Ji, Minister of the Supreme Court of Justice. What do you think, my loyal minister? Pei Ji's eyes welled with tears as he bowed his head heavily. His forehead struck the golden-laid brick, producing a dull thud. This servant thanks your majesty for his boundless grace. Long live the emperor! Long live the emperor! Long live the emperor! Winter, the 23rd year of the great Qianlong reign. The wedding of Pei Ji, Minister of the Supreme Court of Justice. 10 miles of crimson bridal procession lined the streets. This time, it was no longer Shanxi entering the Pei residence with regret and calculation. I was Shanxi, carried into the house upon an 8-man palanquin. The wedding night. Bright red candles illuminated the chamber, dragon and phoenix wedding veils obscuring my vision. I heard the door open. Familiar footsteps sounded slightly unsteady. Clearly, he'd been plied with plenty of wine by his colleagues. The wedding scale lifted the red veil. Pei Ji's crimson wedding robes made him appear even more strikingly handsome. His eyes were red-rimmed, his gaze fixed on me with intense heat. As if afraid I might vanish the next moment. Ji. Ji. He called my name, his voice trembling. Shall we drink the wedding wine? I lifted the cup, feeling shy. No more. Pei Ji swept the cup aside, wine splashing onto the mandarin duck brocade quilt. He lunged forward, pinning me to the soft bedding. His hands braced beside my ears, trapping me firmly within his shadow. I can't wait any longer. His kisses fell in a dense rain, from my brow to my nose, then to my lips. Unlike the performative urgency of that night in the study, this time, his movements were reverent, yet carried a savage intent to devour me whole. 2 lifetimes. He murmured in my ear, his scorching breath sending shivers through my body. I've finally married you openly. Layer upon layer of intricate bridal robes were tossed outside the canopy. The crimson curtains fell, hiding the room's springtime glow. Pei Ji's fingers bore the thin calluses of a man who'd gripped blades for years. When they traced my skin, they sent waves of tingling tremors through me. With extraordinary patience, he kissed every inch of me, especially the red mole on my chest. As if he were branding it with his mark. Pei Ji. I arched my neck in agony, my nails digging into his broad spine. Gently. I cannot be gentle. He chuckled softly, sweat dripping from his sharp jawline onto my hair. He clasped my fingers tightly, pinning me to the bed, forcing me to bear his love, surging like a tidal wave. In my past life, I longed for you madly, only able to touch you like this in my dreams. His voice was deep and hoarse. Each word accompanied a breathless, deep thrust. Ji, you are mine. In my past life, in this life, and in the next. No one will ever separate us again. Outside, the cold wind howled, yet inside, the heat burned fiercely. The red candles burned down to ashes. Tears mingled with sweat. Years later, Prime Minister Pei Ji, whose influence dominated the court and the realm, hurried home after the imperial audience. His colleagues teased him about being afraid of his wife. He merely smiled it off. Returning to his residence, the setting sun cast its glow. I sat on the swing in the courtyard, ledger in hand. Pei Ji approached and took the ledger from me with ease. Then he leaned down and pressed a kiss to my lips. My lady, have you finished the accounts? It's time to settle ours. What accounts? Last night you owed me one. Tonight, you repay it. The story concludes. Thank you for reading. The next installment promises even more excitement.